anything that we put into the chat or any conversations we have that require answers, we will send you a follow-up email and you'll be able to retrieve all that shortly after the session. And with that, I will welcome you and I'll hand everything over to Judy Nagel.
Well, I would like to welcome you as well. This is an important civic briefing, and we will be having a conversation regarding an issue that influences how businesses have to operate and how our lives are impacted. So to help direct this conversation is Jeff Clements, who's president of American Promise, John McCrae, who's the business network manager, and Alan LaPolice, who's the deputy political director. So as we start the conversation, I'd like to introduce the retired De Pere Mayor, Mike Walsh. Over the past 24 years, Mike served as mayor. He has been very protective of maintaining a nonpartisan approach in his administration. The De Pere Common Council unanimously voted to name a downtown plaza in his honor when he announced retirement. The city proclamation stated that Mayor Walsh worked tirelessly with employees at the city of De Pere with many different common councils, numerous volunteers, as well as local schools, residences, and businesses. And Alderman Hanson said, even in the most difficult situations, Walsh kept the council unified and listened to multiple perspectives. During his administration, he saw the city grow from a population of 16,000 to 25,000, with all the growing pains that go with that. So he lends a very credible voice regarding the kind of government we would all like to see in our communities. And he will share with you his thoughts on campaign finance reform and why it's critical for effective government. Mike, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. I also would like to welcome everyone here. There's a lot of welcomes going on beforehand, but I'd just like to add mine to it, and good afternoon to everyone. After having served over 40 years in local government and in community organizations, I totally support the American Promise Amendment movement. Since my office as mayor was a bipartisan position, I am glad that this is a bipartisan effort. I have mostly retired from government service, but I felt so strongly about this effort that I agreed to become a part of it. We need to be able to control our vote and our influence. I feel like we are losing some of our citizen rights, and we need more of a voice in our elections. This is due to the astronomical amounts of money being spent in campaigns. Spending millions is bad enough, but now billions. It is truly exorbitant, especially when it is given by a few donors or PACs. That is why this is out of control and needs to be limited, or else our elected officials will continue to be beholden to the few. I never thought I would see the day when outside money enters into our local political scene, but that did happen when some of our local officials received outside monies for their campaigns. This was totally unprecedented. It seems like some of our state and federal officials aren't very receptive to local governments, smaller businesses, and the people as a whole. I had a very difficult time getting them to address local issues that were important to us. Some would come, listen, discuss, and do nothing. Or they would send a standard form letter thanking me for my concerns or support for certain legislation, but seldom committed. Whenever higher state or federal officials would come into the area, there would be a media blitz with all of the local municipality officials being invited. Over 24 years as mayor, there was only one elected official that I never met and never received a response to any of the letters that I sent. I think that is tragic. I've heard many stories from others, even individual constituents, about that same type of treatment from that individual. That person catered to big businesses because that is where his money came from. We need our elected officials to reflect the needs of the people rather than those of special interest groups. We need them to respond to us and not to be influenced by out of state, out of country, or large donors. This amendment is so important to our country, and that is why we need to support it and drum up support for it so it can pass as the next constitutional amendment. I would like to thank the American Promise team and all of its volunteers for having the passion for taking on this massive undertaking. You are providing a tremendous service to our country. Thank you so very much. And also, thank you for asking me to host this event. I am truly humbled to be able to contribute in this very small way to such a worthy undertaking. So now I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Clements for his presentation. Jeff?
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you for your years of service as mayor to the community and the people of Wisconsin. And it was really nice to see you when we were there in Green Bay not long ago. So I really appreciate what you just said, both on the accurate description of the problem. This out of control money corruption kind of started in the big federal elections. You know, we now have $500 million Senate races, literally 500 million. Then it hit the state elections. Now it's right down in the local community. And as you know, the thing about it, it is not, unlike you and your service, it is not nonpartisan. It is not even really sort of partisan about an idea. It's about tearing apart the community and demonizing the other side and really just doing whatever it takes to gain power. And that's very dangerous indeed. So thank you for your leadership and service and recognizing and getting behind a constitutional solution, because there is one, and that's the good news. We have a constitutional solution. We need a constitutional solution because of Supreme Court rulings that have just said that this money is free speech, and therefore we're not allowed to do anything about it. And that means there's no end to it. So I'm going to share more information about that in just a minute. But first, I want to just also say welcome to, if you're watching this on streaming or in recording, we're doing these briefings around the country, not just in Wisconsin, but around Wisconsin too, because we believe, and we know now after several years of starting this, that Americans are fully capable, despite what the big media might tell us, of talking to each other, regardless of our political differences, and figuring out solutions. Business people do it every day. Mayors like Mike Walsh do it every day. Conflict reduction and compromise and solutions are what we do in normal life. People don't act like our elected officials are acting these days. So, maybe it's old fashioned, but we're proving again, Americans actually really believe and act on that belief that we are responsible for the Constitution and the future of the Republic. And when things get really bad, like they are, we start talking to each other and we figure it out. That's what American Promise is for. Completely nonpartisan, cross-partisan, all Americans welcome into this conversation. So if you're seeing this, get in touch with us and ask for a briefing, give a briefing. The Zoom world has enabled us to do what Americans did in the Pony Express world and the telegraph world and every other times before, and that's connect with each other to do big things together. So that's what we're doing here. So Mike, thank you. Judy Nagel, our leader in Green Bay and Wisconsin, Howard Hauser, thank you both for your great work out there. And now I'm going to turn it over to, before coming back to me for a slide deck that I'll share with you, to my friend Lee Rash, who leads Leader Ethics in Wisconsin, Leader Ethics Wisconsin. Also good to see you, Lee, when we were in Green Bay, and thank you so much for your leadership work and your support.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you all for bringing this civic discussion together. It's really important that we have these kinds of sessions. Leader Ethics is an organization that promotes ethical leadership among elected officials. We believe that ethical leaders are truthful, they're transparent with public information, they're unifiers rather than dividers, and they work to represent their entire constituency, not just maybe the simple majority that may vote for them. And yet we also recognize that those are challenges. Those are life challenges for anyone in a leadership role. And that's one of the reasons why we support the work of American Promise, because at this time, we're also facing some significant systems challenges in our electoral processes, and including the significant amount of money that is raised unregulated and without identification in many cases in campaign finance. You know, it's really disappointing to realize that in this 2022 primary system in Wisconsin, according to Open Secrets and the Ballotpedia, by June 30th in Wisconsin, pre-primary, $58.1 million was raised for the Senate and governor's race. That's pre-primary. And of course, that doesn't include the third quarter report, which isn't due yet. And so the actual number is significantly higher. But it's not just politics, because when you have that kind of money raised and in a very divisive climate with only 26% turnout, you're really targeting the entire state with messaging when you're really trying to connect with a small segment of the population that's going to be determining, in this case, in some the outcomes of the general election. And it has a significant impact beyond politics. There's a significant breakdown in trust in basic institutions. The 2022 Gallup information shows that, I'm just going to give you a quick list here: religion, public schools, organized labor, banks, large technology, Supreme Court, presidency, newspapers, criminal justice, business, TV news, and the Congress all are significantly below 33% in trust levels. Congress is down at 5%. That means that more than 2/3 of the population right now has some, little, or no trust in those organizations. And so you have to take a look at this larger system concern that we have and take some significant steps that can make a difference. And one of them is campaign finance reform. So we fully support the work of American Promise and the effort in Wisconsin, because we need to take this step and we need to take it now.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. I was on mute. We really appreciate that, and all of your great work. Truly important work. I think, you know, the rules and the Constitution and the laws all are critical, and we're working on big pieces of that. But in the end, self-government works because there are cultures of leadership and service minded people like the folks on this call, and to support that and preserve and expand that is so important. So Lee, thank you so much. I'm going to do a share screen and run through a quick deck now. Please do jump in with any questions by either raising your hand. Alan LaPolice on our team will find you and make sure your question gets in there. It may be answered by some of the deck, which I'll run through quickly. But if not, we're going to certainly have time to talk about it. I am going to just move very quickly to get it out in front of you, and then we can open it up to a conversation. Okay, so here we go. Sharing my screen. Let's see if this does the job. And you should see the 4R Freedom Amendment on your screen.
Indeed.
And looks good. Thumbs up, anybody, to let me know you see it. All right, great. Okay, we call it the 4R Freedom Amendment. It is simple. like most constitutional language, but has profound impact. And the profound impact we are looking for here is enabling us as citizens, our state legislators, our communities, and our Congress to enact reasonable and effective rules about how money is used to influence the outcome of elections. Again, constitutional amendment is needed because we have been informed in recent years by a new First Amendment theory, which has never existed in the first couple of centuries of American life, that spending money is free speech and we're not allowed to touch it. Most Americans don't believe that. We are now, in just a few years into this, seeing the terribly damaging impact, because really that translates into, if you're a billionaire, even if you're a foreign government trying to influence, hey, it's just free speech, nothing we can do about it. And worse, so often it's run through entities that disguise where the money's coming from. So it's a real dangerously destabilizing issue that the For Our Freedom Amendment immediately begins to turn that around, and we can start closing the door on the super PAC out of control money. We can bring the rulemaking about how money is used to influence elections closer to the people, as Mayor Mike Walsh described, where the people, in fact, are the ones who are supposed to be represented in this political system. So let's look at the data. It was a theory that money was just free speech, that it would be disclosed, that it wouldn't impact democracy or Republican self-government. None of that has been true. The reality, not the theory, the reality is that spending is concentrating very much among the billionaires, the big companies, the big global companies, some of the big unions, and what's emerged in both parties as kind of a donor class that has inside access, that goes to fundraisers, and often they're putting money into both super PACs and the party vehicles. And that donor class is a very small subset of the American people, yet most of the money comes from that. So we've gone from doubling from 2016 to 2020 to $14 billion. I'm quite confident that will double again by 2024. We're already into the billions for 2022. And again, it's concentrating so that most of the money is coming from a few mega donors who have supercharged influence and actually don't represent or even know anything about the states or communities where the money's being deployed. This, of course, is President Carter, who we were recently proud to receive his endorsement along with the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, Partnership for American Democracy, the Carter Center. And I just put this up because lots of people can endorse and have millions, just to emphasize how cross-partisan and nonpartisan the support is. This is Senator Olympia Snowe, Republican from Maine, now not in the Senate, but on our National Advisory Council, very supportive of this effort. It is supported by Republicans, Democrats, independents, really uniting behind this. So how do we do an amendment? It's going to take 2/3 of Congress to propose it, and then it's ratified in 3/4 of the states. That's how every amendment has gotten done. Bill of Rights, women voting, electing senators, term limits for president, ending poll tax, 18, 19, 20-year-olds voting, you name it. When Americans decided on constitutional change, this method worked. We didn't invent it. Although Congress has to propose it, Congress is usually the last to act after the American people kind of make it what we call ready to ratify. And so that's why we're talking to you in Wisconsin. That's why we're having these kind of conversations, and really great volunteer work like the folks on this call are doing in states around the country. So the idea is national strategy, national support for your efforts, but it won't be done by staff at American Promise. It'll be done by all of us where we live. And then when members of Congress come home, when candidate races are fought or debated, when the state is really unified behind this, as we're getting to in more and more states, it'll be very hard to run for Congress and not be for this. And that's when we get our 2/3 vote. And we're anticipating that in the next couple of years, as you see here. And I say a couple of years, it could be 2, 3, 4. We don't control the timeline. All we control is the decision about whether we're going to get in the game and try to make it happen. But we do think this is very ripe for reasons that I think many of you know, for basically decision by the American people around what the constitutional rules should be for this. So here's some of you are on this call. Many of our Wisconsin friends are not, but this is how we work. This is the American promise. Some of the Wisconsin folks who stepped up early across partisan lines, again in every state. This is our model. People from civic life, business, Rotaries, faith leaders, you name it. It's about Americans joining together to get this done. There's sort of a misconception among some because some of the biggest global companies spend a lot of money to influence elections, that business is somehow likes this system, or business doesn't want to see a change. It's absolutely not true. If you talk to business people, you know that. And so we are lifting the voice of business people, giving business a voice, actually, about what kind of political system that is good for business, good for jobs, good for the economy, good for our country, good for the people. And guess what? It's our constitutional amendment and some reasonable guardrails around the use of money in our political system. These are just two of over 1,000 business people who've signed on. Dave Black, retired chamber leader in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Maureen Klein, vice president of public affairs at Pirelli Tire, a global company that has a big operation in Georgia and America, just among many. Matt Patsky, another business leader, CEO of Trillium Asset Management, makes the case about why. I think if you are in a business, you know how much capital do you have to put into a super PAC instead of into your business? How much are you frustrated by the broken political system that keeps you sort of guessing about what the rules are going to be, where the economy is going to go? And meantime, some big players are behind closed doors making rules that could completely upend your business model. It just doesn't work for business people, and it threatens actually the very good virtuous circle between free people, self-government, and enterprise. And so there's a lot at stake, and we're really delighted to have business people stepping up. Many of them are in Rotaries, and we're one of our first meetings in Green Bay, thanks to Judy and Howard, two Rotary presidents in that area. Thank you. We have a great program with local Rotaries that really aligns what we're trying to do with the positive piece and the principles of Rotarians. And we have a great presentation that Rotary members are giving to share this information with other Rotarians, a very effective way to again, go around the broken political and partisan and divisive conversation, to have real conversation about our communities and our civic life. Why? Of course, it's not just abstract, like, oh, we need campaign finance or constitutional rules that work. It's really about what I think we all want. Again, that virtuous circle of effective government, effective representative democracy, freedom where people can innovate and create jobs and start businesses and do what they seek to achieve in life. That's what the American dream is all about. That's what we need to get back to. But that's going to take some good work from all of us, again, because of this problem. I won't belabor this too much, but I want to just emphasize the problem is cross-partisan. So you'll hear lots of finger pointing. You'll hear, they do it, so we have to do it. You'll hear, oh, you criticize this group, but you don't criticize that group. We are cross-partisan, Republicans, Democrats, independents at every level of American promise. We're happy to say yes, yes, and yes. It's everybody. It's everybody's problem. And so dark money, which is the undisclosed, don't know where it's coming from. Republicans and Democrats both are doing it. There's many different ways they run the money in. But this is not a partisan problem. It's a systemic problem. Wisconsin, as you know, as several of you alluded to, you're being hit hard by the money, just like other states. So you and your neighbors and fellow citizens of Wisconsin are going to continue to see this problem accelerate. You have a Senate race. This slide really tells how fast the problem is accelerating and why this is a crisis of constitutional proportions. The five most expensive US Senate races just 10 years ago are the pink graph that you can barely see compared to the 5 most expensive Senate races in 2020, which now you see accelerating at a rate that I don't think anybody predicted. $200 million Senate races are the norm, some going 500 million. And again, it's not just those numbers are hard to get your head around, and it's sort of like, so what, they're expensive. That money is coming from a donor class that is controlling the issues, controlling the information, controlling the debate. We had a friend in Maine now on our advisory council. He ran the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. It's a pretty influential group in Maine, at least it used to be. And when the $200 million came into the Senate race, in the Susan Collins race, he said it was like being under an avalanche. Nobody could hear us and we couldn't hear each other. So what does that say about free speech, right? If the people who live there, who actually have something to say, they want to be heard in an election, can't be heard and say it's like being under an avalanche, you know this system isn't about free speech anymore. So, oh, there he is. That's Dave Trahan, the fellow I was talking about, and that was his quote. So this is something, again, that we're all recognizing. And as Lee said, it's making the bottom fall out of trust. And when you don't have civic trust, the whole fabric of society starts fraying. And civic trust has absolutely collapsed. The percentage of Americans who actually believe government is trying to benefit the people versus the donor class has just reached, as I said, basically collapse levels. So we got to turn it around, and I don't think anybody's going to believe that it's an easy solution is going to just do it. It's going to take a constitutional solution. The good thing is we're starting at a base where almost everybody agrees. And so let's connect with each other and start moving forward to get it done, and we will get it done. What do we get when we do? It's a permanent constitutional solution. It's going to be able to answer questions for Americans in 50 and 100 years about problems with the influence of elections that we can't even imagine, artificial intelligence, global digital currencies, ways of influencing that would completely boggle our minds. We have to empower Americans to protect ourselves in our form of government. Precedents, again, we're not inventing this. This isn't some newfangled idea. 8 of our amendments so far have corrected Supreme Court mistakes. They're very smart people, but they make mistakes. And sometimes the mistakes are so damaging that the people step up to fix them. And this is one of those times. What other issues are out there that actually bring us together and unify us? Not a lot. This one does. Another advantage. It supports federalism. We're not saying we have some magical, solution that Washington's going to do and force down the people of Wisconsin. The people of Wisconsin will be able to decide what works for you in your elections. And then civic trust, as we talked about it. So this is powerful. It's been done. We're following a roadmap. And I want to just show this because this has, when previous amendments happen, they tend to happen in bunches. What it doesn't necessarily show is those times were very much like ours, where Americans were losing faith. There was political violence, even pandemics, crises all around in these eras. And those are where the opportunities for big constitutional resets are possible. And we get a new era of reform and renewal for the country. And I think that's what we're going to see this time. And of course, we're doing this not just for us. It's really about the generations to come, as I said. So thank you so much. That's our website. That's the page in Wisconsin, if you want to go right there. And I'm going to stop sharing and we can talk about all this. So we really appreciate your interest and hope you'll join us. Back to you, Judy. I see you're talking, but I think you might be on mute.
For a moment, could you address the fact that there were states that had guardrails about campaign financing prior to the Supreme Court decision?
Yeah, that's right. So I think Wisconsin was one of them. So over 24 states had very specific rules around that had gone back over 100 years, back to the last great concentration of wealth and that was being used to take political power in the Gilded Age, as they called it. And many states stepped up to protect the voice of the people. Some of those reforms were around like referendum or other ways of trying to get the people's voice to combat corruption. But most states passed some form of anti-corruption laws dealing with money in the political system. Some of them dealt with only corporate money, some of them dealt with union money, some of them dealt with both, some of them dealt with very wealthy donor money. But the idea that money wasn't free speech, but a very dangerous corrupting force was prevalent. That was the sort of common shared American idea, and most states reflected that. I actually got into this work as a lawyer, and I didn't set out to do nonprofit and this sort of work like many of you. I came to it by some alarm at what was happening. And I did do a brief in one of the Supreme Court cases around this issue, and then went out to help Montana defend their laws that had gone back 100 years, that had basically wrested Montana away from the copper and other big corporations to make it a representative democracy. The average Senate race in Wisconsin at that time was $17,000, state Senate race. It was a citizen legislature. It was, and it was that way because they had rules like that. We won that case. Of course, one of these big new super PACs came in and said, well, you can't stop us. We're coming into Montana. The attorney general at the time tried to stop them. I was involved in that, helping to defend it. We won in the Montana Supreme Court 8-1. It wasn't a close call. Like, of course, Montana has the right to protect itself from that kind of money. Went up to the Supreme Court, summarily reversed, and didn't even give the state a hearing. So all of those states, again, including Wisconsin and 24 others, in a heartbeat like that, lost laws that had been on the books, and you're told you're not allowed to pass them again because in theory they're supposed to be violations of the First Amendment free speech rights of the donors and the billionaires. So that's what our change is doing, and that's why the federalism point is important, that it isn't just for federal elections. It enables Wisconsin to address the problem where you live again. Thanks, Judy. Great question. I hope my long answer wasn't too much. Other questions or comments? Can I put Howard on the spot and Judy maybe just to share, because people might be wondering, how's this going to go over in my local Rotary, or how's this going to go over down at the local chamber? And you've done that, and you maybe you could just share about your first Rotary presentation and the reception you got.
Sure.
I'll reach out first and then hand it over to Howard. I was approached about this topic and needed to find somebody who was from the opposite side of the aisle. So I reached out to a couple of people, and one of the people that came to mind was my fellow Rotarian. He was president of the Rotary Club, and I was president-elect. So we did our first presentation. It was a great presentation that was put together with the help of American Promise, but it was focused on the Rotary four-way test and the Pillars of Peace, which is part of our background as Rotarians. And we really didn't know how this was going to go over. We kind of went ahead with it. We didn't necessarily ask a lot of permission. We did present it to our board. And so we did the presentation, and Howard, you can take it from there.
Yeah, I've been in a Rotary for a long time in this club as well as a number of other clubs, and I've made presentations to Rotary clubs before. The reaction I got from this club, that we got from this club, was really amazing. The number of people that raised their hands and had questions, the people that came up afterwards says, "We really need this in this country. What can we do to help?" It was really overwhelming. So the statistics that we show when we're talking about this, over 75%, and that Jeff mentioned a little while ago, 75% of all people, regardless of party, proved out in our Rotary Club. And Rotary is painfully non-political. I mean, it's just, you try to talk about anything related to politics in any way, shape, or form, and then you get some really ugly comments. But it didn't happen, not that day. I mean, people, when they heard the whole story, they said, yeah, this is something we really need. So it was very good. And a number of those people, as a result of that, the club and the board went on to support us actually getting involved with American Promise on a formal basis, and then, pushing and spearheading this effort here in Wisconsin.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And that's led to so many other conversations with local business people, with civic groups, with legislators, now trying to expand the conversation to other parts of Wisconsin. So if you're interested and want to get involved in doing that, just let us know.
And Judy and I are always available if you want a presentation given to any civic organization, the chamber. We're available, and we'll make you crack old saying, you crack the whip and we'll make the trip.
Howard and I both participated last week in a county administration meeting and proposed a resolution for Brown County in favor of campaign finance reform. So it's working its way through the system, but already there are 168 Wisconsin cities, towns, villages, and counties that have passed a resolution supporting campaign finance reform with a really strong majority.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. And let me just say something about those resolutions. One of our approaches is, this could be a big abstract issue, lots of money, seems overwhelming, the super PAC ads and everything else. But it's intensely personal too. We're all exposed to it. It affects our communities, the things we care about, whatever those may be in terms of issues are affected. And our approach is make it local, make it personal. That's what these resolutions can be. You can do something, not just information, but actually mark the fact of a community coming together, uniting behind this with a vote in your city council, in your community, in your county board, whatever it may be. So over 800 of those have happened around the country, as Judy said, more than 150 in Wisconsin, and 22 states have formally taken action like that. So we'd love to see Wisconsin be 23, but Pennsylvania is racing too. So you're going to have to work fast. But the more states that can spread this conversation and then unite around a resolution, it's a pretty impactful tool.
And we do have a turnkey package to present for doing a resolution. So it's a template where you kind of basically fill in the blank and have all of the various steps available, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Judy, Howard, crack the whip, and I can't remember would you put your emails in the chat so people can take you up on that?
And I think Kathy has a question.
Right?
Yeah, Kathy, hi, you're on mute.
Walsh too.
Well, hello. I unfortunately am so. We've lived back here in Wisconsin. We were away for 10 years, and we're from here. We're away for 10 years, and now we've been back for over 20. And there's such a huge difference in Wisconsin now, compared to those 10 years that we were away, and certainly before that. I'm thinking of several actions that are being attempted in Wisconsin. That one regarding, there's another organization that is promoting an amendment to the Constitution to fight the theory that money is free speech. And I can't remember what the name of that one is, but as well as the against redistricting or the gerrymandering. And in both of those cases, huge numbers of a majority of counties and larger municipalities have passed actions to say, yes, we are for this particular amendment or this particular way of doing things. But our legislature does not believe that they are beholden to those kinds of things. And so despite a majority of the state wanting to take action, the fact that we don't have a process like other states do, where it's the people that vote for the thing and then the legislature doesn't have, all ours are our advisory referenda. So they have absolutely no power. And so I'm a little bit discouraged, and I'm wondering how you all in Wisconsin feel about the chances here in Wisconsin of overcoming that.
Yeah,
Can
thanks.
I respond to that? I'm sorry, can I respond to that?
Please do,
Because
Lee.
I think there are, the questions that you're raising are applying to a number of different areas. And we don't have in Wisconsin the constitutional authority to have a binding statewide voter referendum on issues like this. But when the problems that we're seeing now are starting to affect both political parties and the constituents that support them, it does become potentially a door opener to finally get some legislative support that may seem unachievable prior to that. The significant problems with this last primary election have affected many legislators. And I think we need to realize that persistence on issues like this is critical. And we need to be willing to get more local support to reach out to those legislators in this upcoming session, because the potential for the action to occur when things hit the bottom, it may be the time that you can start to see some action that can make a difference. And so it's important not to be discouraged. Persistence is critical.
Yeah, I thank you, Lee. And I'd like to just follow on that, if I might, Kathy, I agree with what Lee said, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it in other states. We're seeing it in Wisconsin, where, and there are other groups, and we celebrate that. American Promise is not trying to have a monopoly on anything. The more groups, the merrier that get behind this, and that's a very good thing. And you know, I think it's United to Amend Wisconsin, and my friend George Penn and others who actually got a lot of those votes in communities. And that's terrific. And, you know, George was at the Rotary presentation with Howard and Judy, and he said, wow, this is great. I wish we could do that. And we say, well, let us help you do that. And that's really what American Promise is trying to do. It's a little bit different of an approach, because it's not enough. And we accepted that when we started. It's not enough to want it. It's not enough to say we want it. We actually have to make it in the interests of the elected officials and the candidates to be for it. And because that's, you know, we're up against a lot of money, a lot of entrenched power. And so our approach is really, it goes a bit deeper. So that's why, you know, it's going to be up to you, but the non-political and the sort of civic and business oriented approach is actually very effective, we've found, to enable Republicans and Democrats to be for this for completely different reasons. You know, a Republican might be for it because they support federalism and it should be up to the states, or the Democrats are spending twice as much dark money as them, or they got a primary, as Lee referred to, or some big money came in from outside. That's great. A Democrat might support it because, you know, they're trying to get solutions on climate or gun safety and they're feeling frustrated. That's okay. So what we have gotten pretty effective at is allowing people to join in this, to support, and this includes elected officials, to be for it for their own reasons, with their own vocabulary, and be heroes instead of being, oh, I was browbeaten into it by the people back home who passed a big resolution. So it's the best approach, also because we have to get everyone to the finish line at the same time in the country. So the resolutions are going to happen over different times. But this idea that, hey, everyone can be a hero on this, you know, that we can have a big constitutional solution. There'll be a lot of problems to solve then, but at least, you know, we'll be able to start solving them and have a different kind of civic and political framework to do so. So thanks for flagging it. And it's a good point. Good point, Lee. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Just branching off from, go ahead, Mike.
I'm pessimistic, but I'm also optimistic. Pessimistic from the standpoint of my experience with the state legislature over the past 24 years that I was in office. And but I'm also, because it was very hard to get people on the same page or even to address anything. You know, I like to tell the story that when I first got in, the House and the Senate were split, but we had a Republican governor. Well, then we got some things through, we couldn't get anything through. And then I thought, well, geez, it'd be nice if one party was dominant, because then maybe we could get more things through. Well, we would get to a point where I think it was the Democrats came in first, and they said, we tried to get things through, and they said, well, we can't get that through because you're in a Republican area. And then the Republicans came in, and then we go to the Republicans and they'd say, well, talk to the Democrats. Well, then we went to the Republicans got in, and they said, you know, we've got too much else to do, or our representatives weren't strong enough to carry the day for us. Well, but I am optimistic because there's a certain amount of more organization going on than what, say, Kathy was talking about for gerrymandering. I don't see an organization out there that's really carrying the day. I see the organization here a little bit better, but my question was going to be, can you tell us, are there any Wisconsin legislators, senators, or congressmen that have really committed to this, or are they all just saying, well, yeah, I think it's a good idea, but let's wait and see who else jumps on board?
Yeah, great question, Mike, and I'll level with you. We got the Democrats, and the you know the game. If the Democrats are for it, the Republicans will be against it, and vice versa. And partly because the parties play that way, and I don't mean that disparagingly. I mean, I do mean it a little disparagingly, but I mean they look for contrasts. That's what in elections, voters they think will be deciding based on contrast. So, you know, one party's for something, and it will be, they'll say it's going to save the world, and the other party will say it's going to destroy America, and then they go to fight. And so on this issue, the Democrats had a head start in the early days after the Citizens United decision, and a lot of them got on it. That actually made it harder for Republicans to get on it because of the partisan game that happens. That again, to sort of like, as I was saying to Kathy's point, that is why you're seeing a different organization like American Promise that tries to solve that problem. So we actually aren't going to the legislature right now because we don't want to highlight, you know, all the Democrats are for it and make it even harder for Republicans to get on board. Sure. We think this is actually what we need to be doing to enable Republicans to get on board in their own way. And we've tested this in other states, Maine, Pennsylvania. It really does work, because this is a problem in most parts of the country where Republicans and independents agree in the low, and it ends up being sort of divided into partisan camps, and the Democrats have been very fiercely for this. So that's sort of a good thing. We have one party that's completely for it. The Republicans, their voters are for it, and the party is trying to figure out, do I really agree with Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and Bernie Sanders? And you know, that takes some work on our part to say, well, actually you do, believe it or not, but you don't have to say that, because you can be for it because, you know, you like good business, free enterprise, federalism, local solutions. So that's, again, to the point I made with Kathy. We actually aren't trying to put like a lone Republican on the spot to come out and say, oh, I'm for this too. We're trying to build the groundwork so that we can get then an effective strategy in the legislature, working with all of you who know the legislature better than we do. But I can tell you, we had the same problem in Pennsylvania, which is as a divided place as you can imagine, as fiercely divided, complex, every sort of variation of our political dysfunction is going on in Pennsylvania. And we just got the resolution introduced. It's about to be introduced. The leaders of it are Republicans. And we did that intentionally. The Democrats were already for it, so we don't want them to introduce it yet. So the Republicans are going to introduce it, and we'll have dozens of co-sponsors who are Republicans. And then we'll bring them together at the end, and they might be surprised to find each other in the same boat, but that's okay. So Wisconsin's a little bit further behind in terms of reaching that point where Republicans can step out on this, but that's our goal. I'm just leveling with you on the strategic assessment, but we have seen it work, and we are confident if we do our job in Wisconsin, it can work there too.
Do you have
Howard
any
and I
type
have
of
been in
timeline? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Howard and I
Yeah.
have been in conversation with our representative, federal representative. We've had 5 conversations, 3 with his staff and 2 with him. And he is original co-signer on a bill, HR 5841, which would eliminate foreign money coming into elections or supporting referendum issues. So yeah, it can happen. We just need to get him to the next step where it's a little bit broader support that he's willing to give. And let me pass on to you, Mike.
Is there any type of timeline that you're looking at, or is this kind of a continuous evolution? But do you have some set goal?
Yeah, our set goal is to ratify this amendment by July 4th, 2026. That's the 250th anniversary of American independence. So, we actually see a scenario where we could bring, if we can build up these state campaigns and these state efforts to enough sort of velocity in enough states, we'll have a moment, we think, in 24, 25, when we don't control the sort of historic moments where amendments can actually get the vote in Congress, but we can control that we're there when the moment comes. And we think that, the way things are going, it really could be in the next few years. So in some ways, it's up to all of us. How fast can we grow out in Wisconsin, for example, and in other states? And that's why we try to share what works. And if I could, I'd like to put John McCree, our National Business Network manager, on to share something that really worked in Pennsylvania, which was working with the local chambers of commerce. And I know he'd be very interested to support the Wisconsin folks and get introductions to Wisconsin local chamber leaders. John, do you want to say something about that? And then I think we'll be kind of at the end and we can close out.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, we've had the good fortune of running a very successful chamber campaign across Pennsylvania, and we're ready, willing, and able to take that blueprint to Wisconsin. Today's an excellent start. We'd like to give more presentations to chambers around the state. We've done a lot. We can be effective in a short period of time. So any suggestions you have for chamber leaders around the state of Wisconsin who might be interested in having us present, we'd love to hear from you. It's been very effective in Pennsylvania, and I know it can be equally so in Wisconsin. So thanks for that, and please keep that in mind, and we're here at any time.
Great. Thanks, John. If you would put your email in the chat, that would be great. People can follow up with you directly. I think we're at the top of the hour, so want to just begin to wrap. But if there are any other comments or questions from the folks in Wisconsin, this is your call. So good. Okay. Well, those, you heard some of what we think could be next steps, business introductions, local chambers, local rotaries. Please connect with Howard and Judy and John. And we can begin to expand this network much more. We are giving an award to our pioneers in Wisconsin who got this going. The Green Bay, Wisconsin American Promise volunteers, and Judy and Howard are going with others in their local group, are going to Washington, DC to accept that award. And maybe we can get into the chat. There it is, our National Citizen Leadership Conference. And then we do Citizen Lobby Day the following day up on Capitol Hill. And this is where folks like all of us here from every state in the country come together at this national conference, brainstorm, share ideas, share connections, share community, and do effective advocacy. So please do sign up if you can make it to Washington. We're really proud to honor Judy and Howard and all of the folks in Wisconsin for what they have done to begin moving this forward. And people can learn, just like we'd learned from Pennsylvania, we learned from Maine, we learned from Montana, we learned from Delaware, Judy. So we share the best practices that succeed and enable citizens in other states to get them going. So with that, Judy, you want to close us out?
Well, again, I thank everyone for being with us today, and hopefully you can take this information to your group and your centers of influence so we can spread this message. And you are all very welcome to come to the national conference. There will be an opportunity to meet with your personal legislators as we reinforce this message to them. We just keep plugging away at it.
Right, and so we will, and that will get the job done. So thank you, everybody. Nice to see you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Congratulations, Judy and Howard.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Well,
very
you're
much.
welcome. You're welcome
you,
to come
Mike.
with us.
Good night. Bye-bye.
I know.
Bye.